Did you know today there are 68,000 American companies who manufacture, distribute and sell goods in China? It challenges the belief that the Chinese market is closed to the US when in fact, according to Deutsche Bank, China's subsidiaries belonging to these 68,000 American businesses sold $223 billion worth of goods in 2015 alone. This $223 billion figure is not calculated into the US-China trade deficit. In numbers, the gap between US imports and the value of its exports was $335 billion in 2017, according to the US government. But is that figure actually correct? And if not, what else do we need to look at? A report in the Wall Street Journal says the deficit might only be half that. The iPhone is one example. Its components come from many different countries, but because it's assembled in China, the entire manufacturing price is packed into its export value. On the back of the iPhone, you'll see this, designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. This wording allows Apple to lower its tax bill, but it exaggerates how much is going to China. Economist Lawrence Lau agrees that there is a Chinese trade surplus, but he calculates it at $132 billion in 2015, not $367 billion. This is based on the value added on export of goods and services of China and the US. And he's not the only one. Stephen Roach, a senior fellow at Yale and a former chairman of Morgan Stanley Asia, says America's deficit is not made in China, but made in America. He says US politicians don't tell voters that the real reason for the deficit is that Americans don't save. To keep growing, the US must import surplus saving from abroad, and to maintain that borrowing from abroad, the US must give its trading partners something in return for their capital. That is, US demand for products made overseas. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, goes even further.
I think the American strategy should be to pick the United States up, not to hold China down. There are many steps: increasing our infrastructure investment, increasing our commitment to basic science, making investments in increasing hiring through appropriate wage subsidies in the most depressed parts of our country.
Nobel laureate Paul Krugman writes that trade wars aren't good or easy to win, even if you know what you're trying to accomplish and have a clear strategy for getting there. Closing the trade gap is doable, especially as it's much smaller than is being claimed.